Okay, it's past 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome you to our, this is week 3. It's going by quickly out of 16 weeks. It's hard to believe that we're already into the 3rd week, but I hope all of you have started out and you're having a good work week. Let me just very quickly just share with you what our plans are for the evening. You see on the screen that I already have week 3 up, that is this current week, and I want you to go ahead and look at where the arrow is. These are the assignments that are going to be due this week. This is what you will post into Blackboard by Sunday night. But now, be reminded, you don't have to wait until Sunday night. If your work is complete, now make sure that it's as complete as you possibly think it can be before you send it to Dr. Crawford and me, because we don't need to see half work and have to send it back and spend our time looking back over the same thing again. So try to make sure that it's as complete as possible when you send it for us to look at. But if you would look at it, the APSL Task 1 that was submitted this past Sunday night, you should have comments back on them from your instructors. You should have comments back on your from your peers. Those revisions are due to Dr. Crawford and me by Sunday night. And they should be, when you turn them in now, you're going to submit them to the APSL assignment Dropbox as a final grade. So whatever you turn in to Dr. Crawford and me, this is going to be your final grade for task 1 of the APSL. So make sure that it is correct when you send it to us. The next bullet, the APSL Task 1 peer reviews, and that's 2 of them. And a lot of you have already started submitting those peer reviews. Again, whatever you have given to your peers, those 2 of those are 2 of them, 2 on different peers in your Zoom group, go to Dr. Crawford and me for a grade. So it's actually the same document that you have sent to them. You just upload that into the peer review assignment Dropbox. There's 2 of them that you will get graded on. Again, the 3rd bullet, the APSL Task 2, which I am going to go over at the end of the session today. They're due in Blackboard's discussion board, just like you did Task 1 this past Sunday. The APSL Task 2 is due in Blackboard's discussion board. So there's 2 things. The APSL Task 1 revisions are due for a grade. That goes to the assignment Dropbox. The APSL Task 2 draft that I'm going to go over again tonight is due in Blackboard's discussion board, just like you did Task 1 this past week. And the bottom one should have already been done. Many of you have already established your Zoom groups. You've already met. You've shared with me that information. So we're going to move forward with our plans for this evening. Dr. Crawford, Dr. Shepard, and Dr. Hamilton, all 3 are going to be presenting some information. I would ask that we do like we did last week. Listen. If you have questions, jot them down. Many times over the course of the hour, those questions are answered, and just check it off, and we won't need to spend time continuing to go over things that we don't need to go over. However, if there is something that needs to be addressed, hold the thought, and we will address those towards the end. I'm going to ask Dr. Crawford, Dr. Hamilton, and Dr. Shepard at any time, if you see a question come up, then, if it's something that you can respond to, go ahead and take care of it. If it's something that we need to address, then at some point, either of the 3 of you stop, ask the question. If it's not something that you feel comfortable with answering, ask it, and I will respond to it. So that's how we're going to move forward with the questions, if that's okay with you guys, so that we can make sure that we get the most out of our hour this evening. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Crawford, and everything that Dr. Crawford, Dr. Hamilton, and Dr. Shepard is going to be sharing with you is going to assist you with moving forward with Task 2 and Task 3 of the APSL. So Dr. Crawford, I'm going to just turn it over to you at this time.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone had a good day. So one of the things that you've begun doing in your PLCs and that you'll continue to do throughout this process is look at data. And I can tell you when you're looking at data from the 3,000 and 5,000 foot level, at times it can be pretty daunting. And it really doesn't matter the level at which you work. I can tell you that in my time now at an elementary school, there are things now that as I look back at my time as a middle school principal, a high school principal, and a middle school assistant principal, there are things now that I know because of my time in elementary school that I definitely could have used and put into place. It's very, very easy to take a look at all the data that comes in and it can be a little overwhelming. And so one of the things I want to caution everyone to do as you're looking at data is really have a set purpose in mind. Yes, you want to take a look at all of your data, but then it's going to be very, very important, especially in your work when you're PLC, to really zero in on what you're trying to accomplish and then work backwards from there. It's really easy to make a plan and go forward, but if you don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, then it's very easy to look at the wrong data, even though it's data that's important. So that's very critical to look at. For those of you that are at the elementary level, I'm pretty sure that mid-year DIBELS and TRC data is just about done, and so you've got this wide swath of data with which to look at. And so again, you want to look at your end goals and look at them, by grade level. The other thing there is you want to make sure that all of those pieces are for elementary school teachers are gearing you up toward making sure those kids are ready for the third grade EOG. So you start from there, reading EOG, and then you work backwards, making sure that you've broken down all that DIBELS information, and you know exactly what you want to attack and why. It's very, very easy to have data and you applying the wrong strategy based on data that wasn't germane to what you're looking at. For those of you in middle school, again, this goes back to the fact that I've now done all three levels. One of the things I remember very clearly is, for instance, struggling readers in middle school, it's very easy to find the nice and best computer program out there, and they all tell you the same thing. Or, put kids on this for 45 minutes and, their reading scores will go up 10, 15, 20 points by the end of the school year. I can tell you now that one of the things that I've learned is that it's rarely that simple. And if you have struggling readers in middle school, for instance, you need to go back and ask the question why they're struggling. And the same thing would go for math. And then, high schools probably just now finishing up with EOC. The bad news there is, unfortunately, EOC data is what I call autopsy data. There's nothing you can do about it. But the idea is to go back, look at the trends, especially once you get your EVOS data, and then you can go back and pinpoint, okay, where was I strongest, where was I weakest, which of my groups did best, which of my groups didn't do as well, and then apply a strategy from there. That leads me to the last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is at some point in your administrative career, or probably as soon as you become an assistant principal, you'll have to start looking at EVOS data and having some pretty difficult conversations. Data came in for us this year around November, and I immediately tied those in with what I'm doing with my staff with their mid-year PDPs. And it's not always easy, especially when you're getting emails that the same data is always the same data is being looked at also by folks from the Human Resources Department, and they're looking at teachers with more than 2 back-to-back years of negative EVOS growth. You need to get comfortable with talking with people about their individual data and what is and what their strengths are and what things they need to work on as teachers. And the EVOS data is a really, really good place to look. So I think we'll do more on that later on, but just know that those individual data conversations are difficult, especially if you have someone that is struggling and has been struggling. But just know that you need to learn to have them. But for what you want to do right now is, again, you want to take a look at the whole thing, but you want all the data that you got coming in, depending on what level you're at. But once you've decided on what your remedy is, you want to make sure that whatever intervention, whatever program that you're going to try to run over the next few weeks is tied in to the correct data that you are looking at. And so, your principal or assistant principal is a really good individual place to start, because they should be able to know, what the school needs or what that particular group you're working on needs. And if not, just shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to try to help you make sure that whatever intervention that you're going to try is going to attack the whatever data deficiency that you're looking at.
And Dr. Crawford, the same thing applies to me, and several have already reached out, let us know. And Dr. Shepard and Dr. Hamilton, both of them, they have provided their emails. They can share information as well. So it's okay to reach out to any of us, for advice in these areas. Okay. Anything else, Dr. Crawford?
No, like I said, it's real easy, especially at this time of year to, I think I mentioned this before, it's real easy to become data rich, but information poor. And so you just want to, for your purposes right now, you want to narrow your focus so that you can really get a handle and get a good chew on what you're doing so that you can apply that. If you can do this one small thing right the first time, it'll make it easy when you've got to go back and forth between DIBELS first, second, and third grade, TRC first, second, and third grade, the second grade student that's on the kindergarten level, the third grade student on the fifth grade level. So what are you going to do with him? You have the same conversations in middle school and high school, I'm sure. So you just want to make sure that you are really zeroed in on the right data and that you apply the right remedy for whatever you're working on.
Okay, this is from a student, Dr. Crawford, either you, Dr. Shepard, anybody can. It says, what is your recommendation for looking at NCFE data? How deep can we analyze this data to inform instruction when the results provided are so limited? Can you respond? Can anybody respond to that?
What was that again?
NCFE data.
I think you can look at your quintiles.
Yeah.
If you look at your quintiles in your North Carolina final exams, you can start to see which students you're reaching and how. And you can start to alter instruction based upon any goals that you might set up during that course. Let's say your American 1 or your American 2 in North Carolina final exams. You can look at the different quintiles of students there and be able to assess as an instructor, if you look at your lower quintiles and you're not performing well at levels 1 and 2 students, and where their predicted scores may be. I know as NCFEs, teachers don't get to see predicted scores. We're not provided that information, which is very limited to us. But you can look at where your students are achieving, and you can focus in your instruction there.
And Anna, you may be right. The quintiles aren't available in time for second semester. Again, you're going to have to take what you've got and use what you got to the best of your ability. That's really all you can do.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so frustrating for all of us because this growth measure is for our schools and for our teachers and Standard 6 and things like that, and then information is not readily available to us. You have to take what you got and focus on your fundamental instruction. When you do get it, be able to reflect and then plan accordingly.
And again, these are, you're learning already. This is what administrators have to deal with. They have to deal with these frustrations. So you know a lot of this as a teacher, but now as you're moving into administration, you're beginning to put these pieces together, and you just see how intense all of this is. But work with what you've got. That's all you can do. Somebody else asked the question, do you advise us to not use end of quarter data? My principal wants me to target 3 to 5. No, use all the data. I would say the end of the quarter data is important to use. It's just a piece of what you use, though. You're going to, in task 2 that we're going to talk about this evening, remember you're gathering all the data and you're going to put it all on the table. So that is just a piece of the puzzle, and you can gather something from it probably. So, you know, I would use any of it that I could. Okay. We're going to move on with, and guys, if you would just check keep checking the Zoom chat, and, you know, you chime in, instructors, anytime that you need to. We're going to move on now with Dr. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton's going to take it a step further. She's going to talk about EVOS, and she's going to look at it from the elementary, middle school perspective as a principal. And there's a document that I'm going to pull up that Dr. Hamilton has created, and this is already in Dr. Crawford's going to put it in his shells if he hasn't already. I sent him the information, and it's already in my 2 shells for you to be able to use. Dr. Hamilton, I'm going to let you go ahead and move on.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. So good to see you all again tonight. So as Drs. Shepherd and Crawford were just talking, EVOS is another area where you can be so information rich. You could spend weeks in here just digging around. And then also, it's probably the most frustrating piece of data, in my opinion, that we receive, because it does come so late, and it is hard to measure your growth. You really can't measure, am I going to meet expected growth, exceed? So it comes late, and it's a frustrating piece of measure to me. However, it is a measure that is important. Principal pay is now attached to EVOS growth. Teachers' pay bonuses are attached to EVOS growth in North Carolina. And so this is a very important piece of data for us. I don't really know how familiar all of you are with this, but one of the hardest things I think I find that to explain to teachers is that this measures student growth, and that's not the same as proficiency. And so they have a really hard time wrapping their minds around that. And they'll come to me with all these things laid out in this argument, but that's proficiency. This is growth. And it's just so hard to wrap their minds around that, and for even sometimes for us to wrap our minds around it. And so students can exceed growth and still not be proficient. And so those things are just hard to sort of make sense in your own mind. So EVOS is supposed to capture the adult impact on learning, and it's supposedly an even playing field for all students. So if no one's ever explained, think of a number line, and between -2 and +2 is meets growth expectations, which is what we want them to do. If they have a greater than +2, that exceeds growth, and then if it's less than a -2, they didn't meet growth expectations. This is probably the most important thing. The next little thing down there is at the top of almost every EVOS page, there's a bar that explains how to use the report. So you'll say, learn how to use this report, and it'll have a little video right there for you. So when you have access from the administrative view, those are very helpful as an administrator. So can you scroll down just a little, Dr.
Sure.
Stedman? Thank you. First of all, and like Dr. Crawford, I use, whoops, I don't know where the other pages are. Like Dr. Crawford, I use these for my middle of year PDP reflections.
Yeah.
I start with the big picture for us as a school. As a group, we get together and we look at our school accountability growth estimate. And so we look at where we were as a school this year and years past. We compare, is our growth increasing? Is it decreasing? What might be some of the reasons for that increase or decrease in growth? What kind of programmatic changes have we made? Have we had a lot of retirements and replaced with a lot of new teachers? There's just all kinds of, there you go, thank you. There's all kinds of variables that can impact the results that you have. And another thing that we we like to do and that we can do in the EVOS is we can compare our growth with the growth of other schools in the district. So you may want to look at other schools that are close to your school or other schools with similar demographics. So how are you doing in relation to them? So then if you can scroll on down to the next page. Dr. Stedman, thank you.
I am being a good Vanna White.
You are. So it's hard to see on here, but this is probably my favorite report. This is the school scatter plot report. And when you are in the program, when you hover over those little yellow dots, and I know they're hard to see on there, but when you hover over
here.
Yes, when you hover over those, it pops up the name of the school that's represented by that dot. So this, for instance, is my 5th grade math or reading, or I don't know, I took a screenshot today. So if we were in the program, we could hover over and I could see where my proficiency and my growth is versus every other school in my district. So I can see, gosh, maybe I'm below the green line. Well, it's not green in here, but maybe I'm below the MET line at 0, and maybe another school with a similar demographic of mine had high growth, like one of those top dots on there. So I may want to reach out to that principal and see what they're doing. Maybe that might be a little different from us, or maybe have my teachers talk to their teachers, or have a PLC with their teachers, and come together with a cross-district PLC to have that conversation and see, especially if that school has historically had very high growth and maybe we haven't, then to get together and work together and see how we could use that data to help us grow as well. But these scatter plots will allow you to compare your grade levels, your subject areas across the district, compare growth with other similar schools, and like even you can pull up your special categories like exceptional children, free and reduced lunch, AIG. You see how your growth is with that in comparison to other schools in your district. So then after we sort of look school-wide and systemically, we start sort of drilling down a little to the PLC with our grade levels, our teams, or if you're in a middle school, maybe subject areas and like all ELA in 6th grade or something like that. So you can see from this screenshot that it'll tell you as a grade level what is going on. Did you exceed in a certain area? And then it gives you the achievement groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's when you can start drilling down to see, like, for instance, that top line K2 assessment kindergarten PRC. So the children did pretty good in the achievement groups of 2, 3, and 4, but the highest children are red. So the highest children, when you drill down, didn't get it. So what do we need to do to enrich and enhance our higher children so that they're meeting their growth expectations as well? A few years ago, I had about 34 children in my 4th grade classrooms, and the lower children exceeded in reading, the higher children exceeded, and the middle children were red, they didn't need. And in my conversation with the superintendent, we talked about that. Well, the lower children were probably having MTSS interventions, in addition to maybe some EC interventions. The highest children were going to the AIG teacher. So it was sort of those middle children who got left to their own devices, maybe got lost in the middle because of the large number. So those are other things to consider too when you're looking at your data. What were the student numbers in those grade levels or in those classes from year to year? Because that also impacts, the teacher can only be spread so thin before it starts impacting. So then another way that the EVOS will show you this area, if you can scroll down a little bit more, is it gives you this pie chart, and that's really my favorite one because that gives you the achievement areas as well, and it has it in the pie chart, and so you can see which groups are not making it. So then as a grade level, you can start talking about that. The reason I like to start with the school, then look at the grade level, before I get to the individual is because this is very personal for people. Money is attached to this, it's personal, and it's hard sometimes for them to see this data, especially if it doesn't turn out the way they want it to. It's that tough conversation. And so that really helps them sort of see where they are in relation. If they're green and they're upset that they're not blue, and then they see, oh, maybe my whole grade level was green or whatever, that helps them feel a little bit better about it. So it's just things that this personal just becomes very difficult. And then when you scroll on down, right there, you can see where you can choose like your grade level, your subject area, whatever, to be able to pull up the reports that you need. Another thing to consider is your cohort data over time. So where was this class when they were in 3rd grade, then in 4th grade, then in 5th grade, and 6th grade? So how is a particular cohort of children growing as they go through your school? So then the next thing, so then at that point, I'm ready to go on to the individual teacher. Now this teacher I chose has had a great 3 years, as you can see, and it comes this way. And then you also get the bar. You can find the achievement group. So that has it in lowest, middle, and high, and it has the previous year and the current year, and it shows the growth right there as well. But what I really like about that is that it does give you that bottom line is the multi-year trend, and that is not it's not a simple average. It is the value-added report that gives you up to 3 years of single-year growth measures, which are weighted by the number of student scores in the individual subjects over 3 years. So that really gives you that teacher trend. So right now I have a teacher who has met on the lower end of MET for the last 3 years, but when she gets her multi-year trend, it is actually in the red. So that gave me a good conversation point with her during her middle of year PDP recently about her multi-year trend. So yes, you've met, but your trend is not heading in that direction. So maybe what do we need to do? And so we were able to talk about things like even as minute as making sure your learning goals are clear. So then it will also, if you'll just scroll on down, again, has your achievement groups in the pie charts for you. This is that teachers that we just looked at up there. Gives you the achievement groups. So her children, all the achievement groups in math exceeded her reading MET growth. But some PLC opportunities that we have enjoyed over time are talking about student cohorts, grade level, subject level over time, subgroup data over time. So looking at our subgroups of our EC children, our ESL children, things of that nature, achievement group data, and then, excuse me, what we like to do is analyze our strength. Because I'm sorry, my voice is leaving me. Analyze our strengths, because you need to know your strengths so that you do those and you don't lose them. And also, what areas do you need to improve? So can you scroll down for just a second?
Sure.
Here's a worksheet that some colleagues and I created for our teachers for their middle of year review. And it's very self-explanatory, but they just go in, where did the majority of your children place, and then was that above the line or below? So what strengths do you see with that group, and what opportunities for improvement do you see for that group? And you could adjust this form to do anything. You could do this for a grade level, for a subject level, or for the individual. And so it gives them the opportunity, you can scroll on down, to be able to tease those things out. And then they can ask questions about, I know this is my strength, or I have a question about my performance, or what result do I want? What result am I getting? What result do I want? And then scroll on down for just a second, please. And then, so what achievement group do you want to see make more growth? What do you think last year's student in this, why do you think maybe they didn't make growth? And then they can look at the area of need, like those skills and those standards, and what kind of strategies and interventions did we use, and which students were included. It'll also, the EBOS will give you all that as well. And then maybe what is your effectiveness trend over the years? And why might that be different over the years, especially if you're seeing inconsistencies? And then I think there's one more page on there. And then that's just where they can talk about like where they're compared to others in the district and those kinds of things. So think about your talents, think about your strengths, and then how can you apply those talents and strengths to other areas that maybe you weren't as effective in, so that they could help you be more effective in those areas. And so that form is flexible between like individuals or team or grade level areas, maybe in middle school or things like that. And we found that very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Let's look and check on some chats right now. Dr. Crawford, have you been keeping up with this? Is there any that we need to talk about?
Yeah, well, they'd like the document shared, and I think we are going to do that, folks. We'll upload that data, and then I've got the reflection sheet that I use with mine that I'll upload. It's on my computer at work, so I'll upload it by tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so you think we're pretty clear on the discussion questions then?
Yes, I believe
so.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Very, very enlightening. Dr. Shepard is going to take it a little bit further, and as a high school principal, he's going to talk about this from the high school perspective. Do I need?
I emailed you the document. If you want to pull it up in your email, it's on a Word doc.
Okay, you are challenging me right now.
Okay.
Go ahead and talk for just a minute. And let me see if I can figure this out.
Absolutely. So I've emailed it to Dr. Stedman, and if we are not able to pull it up on the screen,
yeah, I should be able to. You said you emailed it to me.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Go ahead and talk, and let me see what I can do.
Okay. And so, Dr. Hamilton did a fantastic job there talking about the major overpoints, and so I'm just going to touch on a couple things as we get through our time here, just to focus on a high school model. Really, high school, middle school are going to be a lot alike in a lot of ways, but as Dr. Hamilton said, you're going to want to focus in on a lot of those data areas that are unique to your school and unique to your teachers, so that you can have discussions, because your job is to make sure your teachers are growing. I always talk to my teachers about EVOS as you're lining up your students in front of a water fountain. And all the students are lined up, and they're all given predicted places in line, or they all have a place in line at the water fountain. And our job as a school and as teachers and administrators is to make sure our students are taking a step forward in line, and that they're advancing in the line closer to the water fountain, not going backwards. And so that's a discussion that we always bring about. And if we look at that, and this document eventually gets pulled up, yeah, Dr. Stedman's got it there. You can see I put some resources there for you. The NC Public School side doesn't have a lot of great resources there, but they do have a lot of great things on EVOS.
And Dr. Shepard, Dr. Crawford and I will put this in their shell as well under the APSL resources. So,
awesome.
So it'll be there.
And so you can go to this website and you can pull up everything on EVOS, all the PDFs, how they look at and create these scores, so you can have a better understanding instead of just our overview. I put the link to SAS there. Many of you already have that. If you're a high school teacher or instructional facilitator, or if you work in the middle schools, you're already in EVOS a lot, because you're having to do roster verification and things like that this time of year. In the high school, it's a focus on growth, not proficiency, as Dr. Hamilton said. It measures the amount of academic progress that students have over a length of a course. And so in high school, that length of a course could be a semester, or it could be an entire year. And that's important. That plays a role because you don't have a lot of time to adjust instruction based upon when you get this data. So those reflections on the data when you do get them, and the goals that you set for yourself, are really important to have as an administrator when you speak to your teachers, because you don't really get the access to the data when you really need it, especially depending upon the length of the course. So students are expected to grow no matter where they are. And so one of the excuses that a lot of folks give, especially for teachers and administrators, we got to kind of set ourselves aside here, because as administrators, excuses are really only good for people who give them. We can't play off of excuses. And so the excuse that you hear a lot from an administrative role is, well, my students are really smart. They don't have any room to grow. Or my students came to me so low, I have to remediate them so much that they're not going to be able to grow. Well, the way EVOS is supposed to be set up, and as it has been examined and set up, is students are compared to like subgroups. And so their predicted score in high school, so let's say their biology score is going to be, it's not based upon a pre-assessment because you don't have time to pre-assess. And so there's already a predicted score for that biology student, and it comes from another assessment that they've taken before. And they like to adjust those pre-assessments. That could be an 8th grade science test. It could be 9th grade earth science. But they have a predicted score. And so you really have to work with those teachers to say, we can't make excuses for the students we have. We have to worry about growing them here. And so let's set goals for ourselves. And Dr. Hamilton did a great job of looking at those charts and data points and quintiles to see where their strengths and their areas of need are, so that you can focus in on how to grow all of those students, because we're expected to grow all of them as administrators working with our teachers, no matter where they come to us. And I will tell you that if your students are honor students, there's still areas to grow because they're compared to other honor students with like testing scores, which means they're going to have an area to grow there. I put the multiple standards here that are assessed in high school. And again, there's no pre-assessments as there are in some other areas. And it's based upon previous exams, predictors. You can see the EOCs, your intercourse test there, our Math 1, a new one to us this year is Math 3, your English 2 and biology, and your North Carolina final exams, as someone had a question about earlier. I listed all of those there. And then your career and technical ed courses are also going to get value added data there. And if they're not in a field test, and I know many of them go in and out of field tests all the time. And so those are the multiple standards of success. I put that little graphic there I just captured off of EVOS for you there, and it talks about what the growth model is. And so you can kind of go back and look at that. And it's based upon score on an assessment given, the student's past assessment data, and the expectation that all students should make at least an average amount of growth. And then Dr. Hamilton put that information in here for you already. What exceed, met, and does not met goes there for. And so looking at trend data, something new for high school that we were evaluated on this past year, that even the EVOS site on NC Public Schools is not updated on, that you actually have subgroup data growth scores this year, and that's based in EVOS. So whatever subgroups you may have. And so my school has a lot of subgroups, are really diverse. And so I have like a socioeconomic subgroup, an ESL subgroup. I have a different racial subgroups. And you get subgroup data on those students based upon their growth scores in EVOS. And so that's great for you high school folks right now who are working in a high school. If you want to talk about a PLC and you're looking at ideas, you can go look at some of that subgroup data and figure out where you can make some adjustments, bring teachers together, and move students forward based upon those subgroups that you might have. Because that's going to be a big part of the evaluation model as you move forward. EVOS growth in the evaluation model for high school principals and the school report card is weighted at 20%. And so if you look at all the other things that are part of that 80%, your growth is measured off of 20%. And the vast majority, or all of that 20%, are really just 2 exams right now until they make a change. And that is English 2, all right, and your Math 1 scores. And so they've taken biology out of that 20% EVOS growth as of last year. And so you're taking, you're skimming off the top there for growth, which is why there's been a lot of arguments back and forth where growth needs to count more. If it counts as our pay, we need to make an adjustment here in the school report card. Well, you can go forth. You can't control those things. What you can control is where your teachers perform, the discussions you have, and how you lead them forward. You can look at data and analyze it a lot. You can go in, as Drs. Hamilton and Stedman and Crawford have talked about. I would say to you, as an active principal, and our school has had a lot of success all the way up to plus 15 in EVOS, or plus 11, plus 7 is basically our trend. You can focus on a lot of data. If you focus, and you don't get it often, we talked about that, but if you can focus on a couple things, I think you can be very successful as an administrator coaching teachers. For me at my school, and my experience has been really 3 things: collaboration, and that's finding what's effective in your school and figuring out how to replicate it across your classrooms, and figuring out how to give teachers time to collaborate and coaching teachers that way. fundamental instruction, you cannot replace best practice in the classroom. And the only way you know that as an administrator is to make sure that you are in the classroom very often, daily. Spend your time in the hallway in the classrooms. That is a challenge, but if it's your priority, then you'll know what kind of instruction's taking place. You don't have to wait on scores to get back from EVOS because you're going to be in those classrooms every day and you can coach that instruction. And then nothing replaces focusing on the standards when you're coaching a teacher and you're looking at, I know this teacher does a really good job. I'm in their classroom a lot. I'm working with them on their PDPs. I'm working with them on all their data, looking at their trend data, and they're doing really well. Why not now? A lot of times in my experience, it's because they slipped away from teaching what the standards are. So that's a really important part when you're coaching teachers on this data is you might be doing fantastic things in the classroom, but are we focusing on those standards? Because that's what that test assesses commonly across the high school model there in those areas. So this resource will be shared with you, but I encourage you to get a lot more depth of knowledge about how the value-added model works by going to these resources that I've put here for you and examining some of those PDFs that the state puts out. They're very accurate, but they're not necessarily up to date in regards to subgroup data.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shepard. Dr. Crawford, any questions that we need to address with the whole group at this time?
Yeah, several students asked if there needs to be an abstract with the APSO evidence. And I wasn't sure how to answer that one.
An abstract with the apps, what are they? I don't know what they're asking.
Are they asking, are they going to give an overview of it? Like a thesis? We're asking? I'm not sure.
Yeah, neither am I. Well, just in general, that the fact that APA papers typically have abstracts does.
No, what they've gotten all the assistance that they're going to get with the template and things. So there won't be any more information given. They have to work at that and figure it out.
I think a lot of that's going to be in your narrative.
It will be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, Dr. Crawford, that we need to address?
No, Cassandra, someone from Dr. Shepard.
Yes, that third one is focusing on the standards. Focusing on the standards. So most issues start for teachers there. They're great teachers and they have a lot of great practices in the classroom, but they're missing the standards, which is what those tests will assess.
And if I can follow up with that, if in case you all didn't know, and I actually have on my work phone, there's actually an app that you can download. I have an iPhone. And so if you go into the App Store and just type in NC Standards, you should get, you might be able to see this. You should get a little screen that kind of, that's dumb. Well, never mind. If you just go to the App Store and type in NC Standards, you can actually download it, and it'll actually give you all the standards, K-12, reading, math, and science, so that you don't have to walk around with these big, huge notebooks anymore. You can walk into a classroom, look at what's being taught, look at what's on the board, and then match that against what's in the standard or not in the standard for that particular grade level in that particular subject.
And Dr. Crawford, if you'll send that to me when we send out the link tonight, I can send that information. I can attach that information to it, and I can send it to you, and you'll have it all at one time. So if you send that to me, I will include that information with the information that we send out when we email their link tonight.
Okay.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank y'all so much. A lot of valuable information. Now we're going to talk about, for the next few minutes, give me a chance to figure out where I am and pull this thing up. Okay, that's it. That's not okay. Here I am. I have come a long way since last week figuring out how to make sure this page doesn't close on me.
You're a rock star tonight, knocking it out.
Well, where did it go? There it went. Okay. No. Give me 1 second. I may have spoken too soon. Give me 1 second. I need to pull something up. Here it is. Okay. here we are. The Absol example, Absol template. Let me pull that up. Absol. Okay. One of the things that I want to point out is that these three practitioners, these are all three acting principals. They have their own schools. They deal with all of this on a daily basis. The buck stops with them. If it doesn't happen at their school, guess who's getting blamed for it? You're looking at them. So they have a lot invested in looking at this data, knowing what to do with it, and where to take it as a team in the school. And that's the whole purpose behind what you're there it is, not opening it up. I don't know what's happening. Okay, let me see. That's the whole purpose in doing what you're doing, because when you become an administrator, that responsibility is going to transfer to you. So what our goal is to make sure that we are preparing you to have a really great understanding of what actually is going to be expected of you. This past week, you have spent time, or the last 2 weeks, you have spent time looking at and researching what is a PLC. What does a PLC look like? Many of you have been working in what you call PLCs, but in my site visits, and that is one of the luxuries that I have with this job as well, that the other instructors have not, they don't have, because they're working during the day in schools. But in the site visits, many of you have shared with me that you now even look at PLCs differently. You realize that you were saying, well, we're doing PLCs, but you really were not doing PLCs the way that they should be done. So you are going to be change agents in your school. You are going to be a force to be reckoned with as you move forward, and you promote PLCs, in the right way. The research revealed some of that to you. You have selected your committees. You have begun to move forward in a meeting. You've established your norms. Okay, and that's what you set the groundwork in task 1. Now, task 2, which many of you have already started, but this is what you're going to do this week. I want you to look at prompt number 1. What are you going to do now? You know what a PLC is. You've pulled your team together. Now, what are you going to do? Your responsibility, and I'm going to ask the other instructors to chime in just a minute. Your responsibility, and again, I want you to look back here. In narrative form, that means you're going to write. You're going to describe the data collection and presentation process central to the PLC's effort to identify the most pressing need that will later be the focus of an action plan to eliminate that need. Okay. At this point, I want you to look at the 4 under prompt 1. It says candidates will describe and evidence data collection. You're going to do 2 things. You're going to describe it, and you're going to evidence it. Data collection strategies and criteria in the process of identifying the most pressing need. The candidate will lead, because you are the leader of this, a collaborative meeting where data is analyzed and discussed, concluding with agreement and on a specific need. Video of the meeting is optional, but I would encourage you as an artifact to make sure you're getting pictures and videos when possible. Let's look at number 1, data collection strategies. This is what they have been talking about for the last 30+ minutes, data collection strategies. EVOS is probably one of the best ways that they gather data in their schools. But there are many other ways, and I'm going to ask each one of them if they would to chime in briefly one other way that they specifically gather data in their schools. Dr. Shepard, I see you're up there first. What is one other way that you gather data at your school?
Other than EVOS?
Other than EVOS.
We work on our PLCs to specifically develop common assessments. And so we collect data off those common assessments that are administered throughout the year beyond that singular test at the end of a semester.
Common assessments, benchmark testing, I think it's called that sometime. Okay, Dr. Hamilton, one additional data collection strategy that you use at your school.
NC check-ins, which is sort of similar to what Dr. Shepard just shared, is the elementary, I don't think they have them anywhere else, version of a mini EOG 3 times a year, and it sort of checks in to see where they are in knowing the standards and gives you that pulse on that so that you know the standards that you need to put into maintenance and then the standards that you need to go back and focus more on.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Crawford, anything else that you can add to the discussion about things that you do at your school, or anything else that you would like to say about data collection strategies?
Sure. One of the things my curriculum facilitator and I look at consistently is progress monitoring data in M-Class. We want to look at those students that we know are in trouble, so those students that are read specifically, and our teachers progress monitoring those students on a consistent basis. And if they're not, I need to know why, because I mean, their data is already telling teachers that those students are in trouble, and we need to make sure that we know whether we're making progress or not.
Okay, thank you. And what you have here, now they have shared with you several strategies. You can, every bit of that you can talk about that in this section right here. There are many other things that would be specific to your own schools. This is where you include this. You're going to narratively, remember if it's in yellow, that means you're going to write something. So you're going to write about the data collection. What are all those strategies that everything you can look at that's going to help you get to the end result, which is going to be identifying that most pressing need. So this is a narrative. As much as you need to write, you're going to write about data collection strategies. And again, remember, it's collaboratively. You're working with a team. Secondly, another heading, criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Okay, you've gathered all of these strategies together. You've got lots of stuff out there. Okay, now, what are the criteria and what is the process? As you look at that, you've laid it out all. You're laying it all out on the table. What is the criteria? What is the process for identifying that most pressing need? Again, you're coming up with a plan. You're developing a plan right here. So collaboratively, as the leader, your team and you are going to come up with a plan, criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Dr. Crawford, anything else you want to say about that before we move on?
No.
Okay. Thirdly, collaborative data analysis. Okay, you've come up with the data collection strategies. You've established criteria and a process for identifying the most pressing need. Thirdly, collaborative data analysis. You've laid it out on the table. You're gonna dissect it. You're gonna cut it apart. You're gonna everything that you can do. What you see, somebody else may not see, but what you don't see, that other person may see. So when you collaborate, all of this is going to, nothing's really wrong there. Is everything that you can gather that's on the table based on all of these things that you've gathered and you've put together up here. Now, once you've done that, your team and you together, you've got everything is there. You're going to analyze it. You're going to cut it apart. Now, once you're going to come to a consensus based on all of this that you've gathered. Based on that, you're going to determine, based on all of this, this is what my most pressing need is. And you're going to put it in a narrative form. Based on all of this, the team has come to the consensus that this is the most pressing need, and this is where you're going to move forward to try to make a difference. Okay, all of this right here is in narrative form. Now, let's come down here. Prompt 2. You've talked about it and you've written about it up here. Prompt 2. All of this that you've talked about and you've written about up here, prompt 2, data is graphically. That means you're going to show something. It's graphically represented in the narrative in the forms of. Now notice it's not just one, it's plural. So that means you don't put just one thing in there for Dr. Crawford and me to look at, because we're going to send it back. It's in the forms of charts, tables, graphs, etc. You're going to put stuff in there for us to look at that's going to help us see all of this that you've talked about up there. We need to see stuff here. These visuals are to be used to illustrate and support the data analysis and the conclusions. Everything you've talked about up there, we're going to see it here, and you're going to be able to show us, in conclusion, why all of this is going to tell us about that most pressing need right there. Remember, all of this is to be done APA style. I will tell you, overall, I was pleased, Dr. Crawford, with the work that came in this past weekend. They worked really hard. Some of them have some things to do to go back and correct, but it's not anything major that they have to go back and correct. So you need to go ahead and get that done and get it over with, so you can go ahead and your emphasis can be placed on getting this done. Remember, after you do this and this, the next thing, if there's a reference section as applicable. If you cite anything, you're going to have a reference section. And remember, the last thing always is that you're going to have an appendices. And if you don't have anything else, the one thing that you will have in the appendices for this, at a minimum, is going to be an agenda and the minutes of your meeting, because remember, this is collaborative, and you've got to prove that you have met with your team and that there's evidence. If you do a video, or if you take a picture or whatever, that will go in that area as well. Once you do that, task 2 will be complete. There is no reason why you should not be able to be successful with this. I would have a conversation with my principal at some time this week. I know how busy they are, but if you've never been able to be a part of looking at the data, I would have a conversation about what these principals and instructors have talked about tonight. You need to be able to say, may I look at the EVOS data? May I be a part of this? Be assertive and ask to be a part of these the meetings where this data is looked at and discussed. Our time is up. We are right at 8 o'clock. Dr. Crawford, are there any questions that we need to address?
So this data is placed under artifacts, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's in the document itself, there's no sense in putting it in the two places. If they've got to put something in the document, they don't need to turn around and put it at the end of the document as well.
Gotcha.
So are there other questions that we need to address from any of the instructors based on what you can see?
Someone's asking about some guidance on the peer review.
Okay. What are they asking about the peer review? Let me see.
Well, I've looked at a couple of them last couple of days, and the form, I think if you just fill out that form, you'll be fine. It looks pretty self-explanatory.
Right. Follow the peer review forms, and the template is in there for them to use. The ones that have come in have been good. Remember to, when you're doing the peer reviews, just remember that if there are issues, be nice about it. Your job is to be nice about it, but be candid about it. That's the whole purpose. I had a conversation with somebody today, and they were concerned about what the other person would think. I said, as long as you said it nicely, then there's nothing wrong with it. You've got to learn to handle tough things as an administrator, and you're going to have to deal with teachers sometime that need to step up to the plate, or and every one of you want your work to be right when it goes in. So when you look at it, you're not being quote, mean to somebody. You are providing good, constructive feedback to them so that when they turn their final product in, that it should be right. So none of us should take anything personally as our peers are looking at this work.
Some questions about the peer review Zoom video?
Okay, that will come after this week. It's not due this week, but they have got to complete task 2 first before the peer review video is due. I'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next Tuesday. They're not quite ready for that. We need to get through task 1 and 2 before they do the peer review video. Any other questions? This has been a great night. I want to thank the instructors for the work that they put into this ahead of time. James has asked a question. Can somebody see what it is that James needs?
He is asking if you're going to offer direct feedback on this week on task 1. I've provided feedback to every student on task 1 that was submitted in the discussion board. I have provided feedback to every one of them. So if something was not, now if they're in Dr. Crawford's class, if they did not put it into the internship shell, I will not be looking at Dr. Crawford's class unless it comes to me except through the internship shell. So that may be what they're asking.
And yes, I finished the second class actually this morning. So what I did was I reattached everybody's paper with specific comments on the actual paper. Okay.
But now, if you are in Dr. Crawford's 2 classes and you need me to look at something, your work will need to be, and some of your students have done that, you need to submit it through the internship shell for me to look at it, and I will provide comments once it gets to that point. Now, you know, and only do that if you are having problems. There's no reason for Dr. Crawford and me to look at the same thing. That is for if you are having problems with something. My job is to go over and beyond what Dr. Crawford will be doing to assist you with that. Okay, other questions?
Someone asked if the peer review groups need a group leader assigned.
That's left up to them. That's a part of leadership. I will let them, Dr. Crawford and I are not going to make those decisions. We're going to let them make those decisions amongst the groups. Leaders need to emerge. You've got to take leadership roles. And that will change over time. That will change over time. They'll become comfortable in saying, "Tag, you're it. I've done my time. It's your time now." So.
Dr. Stedman, there's a question here. Do we add the task 2 onto the task 1, or do we have it separate and merge them later?
It would be better for Dr. Crawford and me, and even for the students, if they would separate it, because we won't have to scroll down and you know, spend a lot of time trying to find it, and then put it together after all the tasks have been completed. It would be much easier for us that way. Okay. Okay. Well, remember, we will be meeting again on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Dr. Lamb, I've spoken with him today, and he'll be ready to share some new things with you. And then if there are some questions about any of this, we'll spend the first few minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, you know, clearing up anything that you may have anxieties about at that time. But then he's going to move forward with some task stream and some other things that you've got to do as well. Okay. If there are any other questions, then you can email Dr. Crawford and me, and we'll be glad to assist you. You know how to call me if there are any major issues. You will be getting this video later on tonight. It's pretty long, so it's going to take me a while to get it, you know, uploaded and to get it out this afternoon. Okay. Anything else for the good of the evening?
Let the church say amen.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Crawford, you good?
Let the church say amen.
Okay, man. Okay, okay, it's over with. He just said, just as I am, and amen. Good night, everybody. I'll see you.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay, thank everybody.
Bye.